talking about a topic that we tried to talk about a couple of weeks ago and we lost volume. So we're doing it again. And my guest is Dr. Alicia Del Prado. We're going to be talking about how to prevent and minimize parental alienation. Here she is. Good. So I'm sure that the same did last time because that was horrible. All right, let me get her in here. Let's see. Yeah, we were just saying what a bummer because there were so many great things that you said last time, Alicia. And I was like,
Thank you.
why did it have to happen? But anyway, here you are. So we'll get right to it. Before we even start, can you tell us what parental alienation actually means? And I'm going to close this window.
Yes, no problem. And yes, thanks for the patience from the audience. Hopefully they can hear me this time. But unfortunately, parental alienation is a really painful process of psychological manipulation that happens when one parent really tries to turn their children against the other parent. And the consequence of that can be really painful and can be estrangement and hostility as well, between the child from the child to the parent typically.
Yeah, and I know that well, I told you that our book that just came out is on this topic. It's called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, and we found out that this is happening to about 22 million divorced and separated parents in America and Canada alone. It is a huge epidemic throughout the world, and it's so painful, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So I'm really happy that you agreed to come back on again and talk about it for the second time. So
Thank
can you
you.
also, yes, can you also introduce yourself officially and tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Definitely. So I'm Dr. Alicia Del Prado. I'm a counseling psychologist. I have a small group practice in the Bay Area in California, and we work with children, adults, families, couples, navigating whatever it is that's coming up in their life. Often it's relationship problems, can be depression and anxiety, trauma as well. And that's what I do kind of Monday through Friday, so to speak. I'm also a parent, and this topic is also close to my heart in the sense that my parents are divorced, and I am fortunate that I did not experience, or my parents did not experience this type of alienation. And at the same time, I really can kind of resonate with the conflict and the stress that can happen for families during this time. And so when I can try to contribute in any way to kind of help make this smoother or minimize this or avoid it, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you for that. And it's nice to have somebody who understands to some extent the perspective of a child that's experiencing that kind of conflict, because you know that this community is dealing with a very high level of a lot of our clients whose exes are very difficult for whatever reason, if they have a personality disorder and or an active addiction, they they will often weaponize children, especially pre and post separation when someone might not even realize what's going on, and
Mhm.
in order to punish. And so I think because it is so common, people come to us and say, I feel like it's going to happen and there's nothing I can do about it.
Mhm.
What do you have
Mhm.
to say to that? Like, it's destined, I'm destined to lose my child.
Yes. Well, the sense of what do I have control over and what don't I think is a very understandable theme during these transitions. And so I think it's important that as much as possible, we help folks focus on what they do have control over. Because if they only focus on, understandably, on what they don't have control over, the hopelessness increases, and also the emotion dysregulation. And when we become emotionally dysregulated, all that other stuff we need to be able to stay grounded in these hard changes goes out the window. We're not able to stay focused. We're not able to feel safe. And so I think the main thing is helping people know, even though there's a lot out of your control, let's help to try to stay grounded in what we do have agency over.
Yeah, you had said last time, because I wrote it down, fear is a filter that influences things.
Yeah, right. And so fear is one of those most powerful emotions. And the fear adds a filter on how we see ourselves, the world, our children, our ex partners. And unfortunately, that fear can be used in detrimental ways. Hopefully, we can see fear for what it is and then say, you know what? It's okay. I'm afraid. Honor that fear. However, don't let that fear dictate your choices because then we're not operating from that prefrontal cortex, which helps us kind of get through some of these challenges. It's hindbrain, it's midbrain, and that's when we're operating from trauma. Yes, we need to run from the bear when the bear is there. The reality is, in parental alienation and some of these other high conflict situations, that's not going to see you through. It's not going to serve you well through the end. So honor the fear. Don't let the fear be in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Are there things that you see that people have misconceptions about regarding this topic, regarding alienation?
Yeah, great question. So, would you say from the outside perspective or from when you're in it?
Both actually, because sometimes when I'd say start with someone who's in it, and then from the outside, what people would think about it.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I think starting on the inside, I mean, our children are often our most precious, reasons for being. So when the stakes are high, then we tend to operate again from that kind of, primal kind of feelings. So I think that it's important to try not to catastrophize in these situations. And I really want to say that with compassion, because I know that if you feel like you're going to lose your kid or never talk to your kiddo, I mean, that is like a crisis scenario. So I know that's real. And our brain, and from a cognitive behavioral therapy perspective, it tends to think in black and white, overgeneralizing, catastrophizing. And then what happens though is that even though it feels true, percentage wise, it's probably low. And if we can stay in that, we aren't going to make the scenario maybe even more complicated. And so that goes back to what we have control over.
Mhm.
From an outside perspective, I really hope we can have humility and compassion for those going through this, so that we're not then further isolating them. Oh, we don't understand what's happening there. I'm not going to talk to that mom or that dad. I really hope that we can, just as your book is doing, like putting a flashlight on these situations so that the village can show up for the couples and families that happen to be in this situation.
Yeah, and what you're talking about regarding people from the outside, I think it's really tricky because there's a lot of judgment, and often we think about the terrible thing that if a parent had a child that died, there'd be a community rallying around them for support. But when you have a child that's not speaking to you and an ex saying how terrible you are, there's so much judgment and shame inside of the person because they feel like everyone must think I'm a terrible human being.
Totally. And that's so triggering. See, feeling judged, being, misunderstood. And so even just small pieces of kindness and neutralness can go a long way in that situation.
Yeah. Are there things that you recommend either a parent in it ask for specifically or someone who sees someone going through that do to support them?
I think don't be afraid. Going back to fear, try to lean in to that person, of course, within your own safety and comfort level. But I think that sometimes people get tripped up. They don't even aren't even necessarily coming from a place of judgment, but they don't want to say the wrong thing,
Hmm.
or they don't know what to say, and then that adds to the silence, which is then interpreted by the parent going through the alienation as being judged or people don't care. So I think, taking that risk with people in your community to check in is helpful. And I'm not talking about being nosy or asking questions that aren't for the help of the other person, but I think not, trying to lean in to those communications. And I actually, with my colleague, Dr. Anastasia Kim, we have a constructive conversations model, and it's a way to engage and broach in difficult conversations step by step. And one of those steps is, doing the opener, trying to ground the conversation in a value. Maybe it's love, maybe it's hope. Those are small things that kind of give people the courage to have difficult dialogue.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking there's a lot of people that reach out that say someone that I love, my adult child or a close friend of mine or a relative is in a very unhealthy relationship and I don't know how to approach them or support them. So I imagine that those conversations, the constructive conversations might also apply to things like that.
For sure. The listening goes a long way. It's cliche and it's time and tested, true and true. I know in our last conversation, we also talked about love languages. And I think that kind of also applies both with our children as well as just with other loved ones. It's really trying to understand, what love language does that speaks to that person. And if we can take time to really understand that, then whatever we attempt will land better.
Yeah, can you go through some of those examples that you had said last time about love languages? Because I think we were talking about how do you deal with a child specifically who wants nothing to do with you, and you use love language as a way to possibly bridge that gap.
Exactly, because the love language literature was seen initially as more in partnerships, and then the
Mhm.
research showed that it's actually really effective with children as well. So, if you're getting rejected by your child, they're not talking to you, one approach is to kind of conceptualize, okay, is there love language quality time? Is it words of affirmation? Is it physical touch, like hugs, for example? Is it gift giving, small things that help them know, oh, my parent thought of me because, maybe this is the best example these days, but the Neatos are the craze. They got me a Neato, can't get them anywhere, by the way. But anyways, but knowing what your kiddo kind of what helps them feel seen and heard, being intentional, because often what happens is, like, I'm a big words of affirmation person, so
Mhm.
I might go to my child and tell them words of affirmation, but if that's not their love language,
Mhm.
it's not going to help them feel loved. Which is hard to understand, because guess what, when someone gives me a word of affirmation, I feel amazing. So
Mhm.
knowing the matches is really key. And I think the other thing with the alienation is your child might not respond in the moment, and often they don't. They might, but especially when there's been so much rupture or so much toxicity that's out there, it will take time to rebuild. And so, doing the love language, hopefully you see some outcome, but if you don't, kind of trust in that the repetition will break through to them.
Yeah, I think you had said last time that it depends on being that reliable, consistent person.
hmm Yep, exactly.
Mhm.
Attunement, attachment, those are things that aren't built overnight. And that can be hard. And also just trying to use that to ground yourself that, this relationship with your child is worth it, and to keep trying.
Yeah. And so now I'm thinking about the word hostility because a lot of times, if somebody even has the chance to see their child from a distance, we've heard this from a number of people we know, the child will ignore them or scream at them to go
Mhm.
away and say, I want nothing to do with you. I hate you. Maybe they have the idea that you abandoned them, the narrative from the other parent. How can you deal with that in the moment?
I know. I work with clients who are in similar situations. And first, I just want to say it is brutal. It is so tough because parents are people too. So even though it's your child, you might have your natural reactions. You might want to yell back. You might want to withdraw and run for cover. So I think first, just having that self compassion, knowing that this is hard, and then, really trying to self regulate. Okay, your child is doing this for reasons, fair or not fair. And how can you self regulate to get through it? So, doing your own self soothing, your own distress tolerance. If you're interested in any of those things, one of the go to persons for that is Marsha Linehan, has all the distress tolerance skills. And so, really trying to do that, and that you can attune to the person. Now, of course, if there's physical safety issues, that's a whole nother ballgame. But
Mhm.
if you can, once you self-regulate, trying to respond to the child, and even if it's okay, need to leave. I need to stop this. I'll be back, And so it's kind of like you can take a break, you can set your boundaries, and you can come back.
Yeah. So another thing that you had talked about last time, we're having micro goals. And I think that
Yeah.
often when somebody has not been in touch with a child and they finally get court ordered therapy and their ex delays it for months and then they finally get together and they're in the same room, they think everything's going to go right back to the way it was. But that's
Yeah.
not what usually happens. So talk about that and micro goals.
Totally, right? It's the movie, like it's that scene where there's reunification and everything is better, and those are uplifting. I'm often crying during that part of the movie. And then when we come to back to often with real life, that doesn't happen as often. So the micro goal is the idea of like, okay, I might have this big goal. This is what I hope my relationship with my child will be. How can I break that down so that I don't give up? And
Mhm.
also can just also have something a little bit attainable. And with the micro goals as well, yes, sometimes goals is, okay, I'd love for my child to say this to me. And, I might feel really validated. However, if you can make the micro goal more about yourself, we tend to find those to be more efficacious for yourself as well as for the relationship. So maybe the micro goal might be, okay, I'm going to spend at least 10 seconds hearing my child out with what they're upset if they're talking to me. Or I'm going to wave hello and say, this is what I hope you to know today. That has
Mhm.
nothing to do with how your child responds. That's a micro goal that's about you and your actions, whether they receive it or not in our control. I think that's a theme for today's conversation is control. But I can hopefully sleep a little bit better at night knowing I did what I could to try to reconnect.
Yeah, I mean that's great because it's more of something that you can do for yourself. Like, do I have the courage to do it even if I don't like it, even if I feel like I'm going to get a terrible response, I'm going to keep doing it because I remember that if I'm still the consistent parent and I keep
Hmm.
saying, not always in like crossing their boundaries, but I'm still like sending little signals the best that I can.
Yeah.
That's the most that someone could do in a situation like this.
Right, exactly. And over time, as the child gets older, they might be able to revisit, oh, I remember when my parent did this, and like trying to make sense of it from different angles of their life that then you can again stand by and revisit as needed.
Yeah, and you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation that the statistics show that it's pretty likely that kids in these situations, and this is different from justified estrangement, where let's say the parent was either negligent or abusive. That's not what we're talking about. But that kids are curious and they often do come back to a parent who feels like it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It does happen a lot.
Yes, right. It does. And I hope that can give hope for anyone listening that is going through it right now.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, Alicia, can you tell people how to find you?
Yeah, so feel free to visit our website, www.drdelprado.com. We're also on Instagram at Dr. Del Prado and also at Del Prado Counseling. And I look forward to being able to support everyone that's going through stuff, which is, I guess, all of us.
Yeah, right. Oh, thank you so much again. And I think this time it worked.
I think so too, right? No one has told us yet we can't hear you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
the win
All
for
right.
today.
Yes.
Micro
Thank
goal
you.
success.
Right. All right. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.